Hey there. Psychology has taken the liberty in the textbooks that I have to teach out of right now of including certain aspects of the body, specifically the brain, and making it the godhead for psychology, which I find is interesting because the mind body split actually only became a thing when Descartes wanted to use cadavers, and the church said that he could use them only if he kept spirituality out of the equation. So he agreed to do that, and then a culture erupted where all of a sudden our mind was separated from our body. And Freud, he had ideas that we have a subconscious mind and a conscious mind, and that actually our subconscious mind is larger and is more powerful, basically more dense than our conscious mind. So the idea of psychotherapy is to bring all of the unconscious to the consciousness so we can actually do something with it. But he also had an idea that we have a super ego, an ego, and an id. And if you think of this, it's kind of like a devil and an angel on your shoulder, and then the mind that allows the two to stay sane. So the mind is constantly always in a battle. But if we consider the idea of having a subconscious mind, which we absolutely do, and that is literally the place that we need to go to create changes in our lives, because all things basically that are foundational are coming from the subconscious mind until we can go back to that story and recreate a new pattern. So any patterns that you're stuck in, you're really stuck in because of your subconscious mind. Even today, one of my students said he really struggles, and I see that he's a wealthy person. I see that he can create wealth, but he's like, I am very afraid of debt. I'm afraid of of getting shot if I can't pay, because he's had an experience where he's afraid that he saw somebody get shot because he couldn't pay. So he is afraid also of being in debt. He can't conceptualize that he could keep money. And then later on I said, has anybody in this class adopted? And he said, yeah, me. And I said, well, no wonder why you're afraid that you're not going to be able to keep the things that you want. You came into the world, this whole entire, your earth, your mother, you were in her womb, and all of a sudden she was taken away. And that's the only thing we really want when we're an infant. So that kind of work starts in the subconscious mind. And those instantaneous stories that are created by the subconscious mind that we never really have access to until we really dig into it, they change us, and they are creating our lives, and we don't even know what our lives are being created from, and they're those moments. So we have a subconscious mind, a higher conscious mind, which consider it like your highest self, and then a conscious mind, which is basically the ego, maybe, that bridges all of them. But if you consider this, that the possibility that the soul actually is incarnating in the mind, the body, and the heart, rather than this idea of the soul, the mind, and the body, we have a different framework to work with, to align with in that context. So if we consider the higher conscious mind, maybe the mind, and the conscious mind, the heart, and the subconscious mind, the physical body, the entirety of the body, because on the singlest level of consciousness is a single cell that has 46 chromosomes and insane amounts of DNA that are carrying genetic coding from years and years past, and we are carrying that into the present and don't even know that we're living out other people's stories. That subconscious mind is basically running the show of our patternings. And the subconscious mind is the physical body. The physical body lets us know what's going on in our subconscious mind. Even if we can't articulate it with words, most of the things that were established in our subconscious mind actually were established in times that we were so present and also unaware of how to cognitively explain something. So we have the vibration about it, but we don't have the articulation about it. So I want to take this idea that the brain is the godhead of psychology, because in truth, psychology started as a philosophy. So it's very interesting as far as a media sense, what we're teaching our students, because we are teaching them that the brain is the home of psychology. And the truth is the body is the home of psychology. And they niche pick which organs are going to be worshipped, basically. And here's the thing. The singlest cell, the sperm knows how to infiltrate an egg. That's divine intelligence, right? Every cell in your body does what it does naturally without you trying to control it and tell it what to do. That's divine intelligence. If you are a pregnant woman and you are in a coma, your body is going to naturally birth your baby. That's what's going to happen because your body has a divine intelligence. If you are in a vegetative state, you are still alive. Your body has a divine intelligence that's totally integrated with but separate from your brain. So more to the point, what I want to say is what I believe is the most healing thing on the planet is embodiment of the highest self. But we can't make room to embody the higher mind, the higher self, when our subconscious mind is filled with shit that is just piled in and we create walls because of. So the heart is actually the place where it remembers it all, it feels it all. Your heart is the place that you believed even when people told you to stop believing, that you were hurt and you still had expectations, and your heart knew that there was love in the person that wasn't loving you back. Your heart knew that there was sadness in the person that was making you sad. And rather than experiencing that heartbreak, we grow into a society that worships the mind again and tries to logically override that heartbreak. So we're not actually utilizing the higher mind in a higher way. We're using it from the same place vibrationally that our subconscious was created in our physical body. So these stories, our body is a warehouse for stories and cell bodies that are telling stories of other people that have lived before you. And when we are trying to create anything in our lives, we have to be aware that those cells are the home of our subconscious. And psychology will say that really, it's all in the mind. You have this mind and that mind, and our minds are fragmented, but your subconscious is living inside of you. It's a living, breathing entity that's actually incredibly powerful. It's more powerful than probably resistance. But the thing is, then actually creating an expansion. But so what we do is we bypass our heart and we go right into the mind, and we think that we're using our mind, and we're going to use our mind the same way that our subconscious works, which is really not the best. We're not using it in an actual higher way. Let me vision and vibrate on my highest self. We use the mind to try to override the subconscious. Okay, well, I'm feeling this way, so there's this polarity. We're missing the whole balance. We're going, okay, my mind has to override the physical body, and why is this doing this? Why am I feeling this way? And we are constantly at war in a polarity. Instead of really, rather than bypassing the heart, bypassing the needs of the feeling body, and just jumping straight to okay, well, my subconscious is doing this, but there's no logical reason for that, so I'm just gonna, I'm gonna think my way out of this. Rather than doing that, we can access that energy and pull it back into our heart space and say, heart, my love, your heart has beat in your mother's womb. Your heart has bled for stories and for things that it desires, and it has beat for you when you were pissed drunk and blacked out. It has beat for you in times that you wanted to escape this fucking life because it's dense and hard and harsh. Your heart is the home of your story. It's the bridge between what Freud would call the superego and the id, or the higher mind and the lower mind, the subconscious and the supraconscious. Your heart is the thing that, when you let it speak, shows you the human experience in a way that doesn't feel totally devastating, because the truth is, your heart, when you let it, instead of trying to override it with your mind, remember what it always knew, which was that the only thing is love. The only reason someone's hurting you is because they're hurting, and you wanted nothing more than to stop that hurting. And the heart itself has those memories of a higher divine truth that you always knew. But what we do, rather than hearing that or feeling what we actually feel, is we bypass the heart and go straight to the mind and try to override the subconscious mind in the same basically problem-oriented way that the subconscious mind oriented, when really, if we utilize our higher mind, we can access our higher self and we can embody a higher self. But in order to do that, we need to basically know what's going on in our subconscious so we can eradicate those stories and create a new one, because we're bringing stories that were created when we were children into adult lives and bodies, and we wonder why our relationships don't work. We've never been taught. We don't know. We live in a society that tells us to negate our truth constantly for the sake of fitting in, and if you're here, it's because you've never actually felt like somebody who totally fit in. So the way to not feel like a fucking alien constantly is to really not bypass your heart, to really have a deep, there is something for a soul-lived life, a spirit-led life, but I believe, in my experience, the more that you lead a spirit-led life, the more spirit leads you right to the heart. That's the place where divine intelligence basically pulsates. It's the first thing that's created. It's the first thing that we understand ourselves in a human body. Like, that's our first movement, is our heartbeat, besides all of ourselves. But that's how we like establish, like, okay, this is happening. I have a heart. I'm coming in. I'm actually coming into this planet. I'm going to experience this. So when we let our heart remember what it always knew, without being like, okay, well, and sometimes that's like, we're animals. We can't get over that. Sometimes the heart is like, okay, I'm going to stay away from that person. I don't need to explain myself. I don't need to over rationalize why I don't like this person. As an animal self, you trust the heart. And if the heart says like, that doesn't feel good, you just walk away. And sometimes the heart is, and that doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean you don't like them. It literally means that you love yourself enough to trust yourself in those situations, and you love them enough to trust that, like, you don't want to toy with a cat and mouse game for some reason that is an ego game, because that's what happens when we don't listen to our hearts in those ways. We're literally toying like a cat and mouse game with somebody else for absolutely no reason. It's just a waste of time. It's a distraction from creating something more in our lives. So I want to encourage you to not believe what the hype is, that your brain is the thing that is your enemy. Your brain's your best friend. Your body's your best friend. And it has created story after story after story to protect you. And those stories likely aren't serving you anymore. But the one for sure that I know, if you're here, it's because your heart remembers what it feels like to love freely, to want freely, to be so confused about why it has to look like this on this planet. And if you go back to that memory, that's where your consciousness lives. That's where you can create an actually conscious life. It's not going to be up here from a place that's trying to override down there. Does that make sense? Your heart is the seat of your consciousness. Listen to it. Okay? Remember that what it knows, just because the world showed you different, it still knows what it knows. And the world might have shown you that this place sucks and love is not real and blah, 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 but the heart knows the bittersweet essence of being truly alive. Go there, because that's the place where you become truly alive. I love you.